Wonderful. So as I said, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's really good to have you all here, sort of ready for kind of this introduction to UCAS. Many of you are probably in year 12, maybe some of you are a little bit younger or a little bit older, kind of wanting to sort of start thinking about what's going to happen next when you leave school or kind of going back into education or anything like that. So just to kind of let you guys know how this platform works, so this platform goes to training. So we do have a chat function that you should all be able to access. All of your microphones will stay muted throughout. So the best way to communicate to us and ask your questions and stuff is through the chat function. And we're going to test that out first now. So you can all see the question on the board. Can you hear me? So if you can all just quickly write in the chat yes or no, just so I can make sure that you can all hear me and I'm not kind of talking into the void. So I'll carry on speaking until I get few responses, then I'll move on very quickly. So hopefully you can all hear me. Yeah, I'm getting lots of yeses in the chat, which is good. Wonderful, wonderful, good, excellent. So we'll get started then. Now you can definitely all hear me. So a little bit about Royal Holloway before we get started. So hopefully many of you have heard of Royal Holloway, and that's kind of why you've come along to this webinar today. You've seen us advertise it, all of that type of stuff. And on the left-hand side here, we have a list of all of our courses or all of our departments that you can kind of study at Royal Holloway. You have a map of our campus and kind of where we're located just outside of central London. So we're about 40 minutes away from London Waterloo by train. And kind of, as I said, nicely positioned as a campus university, really close to central London. And there will be an opportunity at the end to kind of find out more about the university. But also, if you do have any specific questions, you will be able to ask them to our student ambassadors as well. And kind of today's really simple, as I've kind of already explained. Today's really a really simple session. I'm going to give a very brief introduction to the UCAS process, kind of touching on the key components, and then we're going to hand over to our student ambassadors to answer your questions. So it's really important, obviously, that you're kind of listening to the session, but also thinking about stuff that you want to know, kind of off the back of kind of what I say or kind of what we talk about. So so do kind of jot those down, or do pop them in the chat as soon as they kind of come to your mind, and we'll pick those up at the end. But the session is also being recorded, I should say. So if you did want a recording of the session afterwards, say if you kind of haven't got time to make notes or anything like that, you can do that, and I'll put all the details in the chat at the end as well. But to get started on kind of what UCAS is, so I'm going to give a very brief introduction to what UCAS actually is. So it stands for the Universities and Colleges Admission Service, and was founded in 1992, so it's almost 30 years old. Basically, UCAS runs the application service for all undergraduate degrees, which pretty much probably all of you will be applying for in the next year or next couple of years. They also look after admissions for performing arts colleges, postgraduate teacher training schemes, other postgraduate courses like master's programs, and other post-16 education and training, such as traineeships and apprenticeships. So UCAS is kind of the hub of higher education, really. They also run conventions, as we see in the picture here, and other university-related events. Obviously, in the last kind of 18 months, 12 to 18 months, these events unfortunately haven't been able to take place in person, but have been taking place online. And you may be able to attend some of these events in the new academic year from September onwards, where you'll be able to meet lots of different universities, pick up pens and leaflets and all that type of stuff to kind of find out about those universities as well. And this is what the process looks like. So the actual application process, we've made it look really nice and jazzy. It's not as nice and jazzy, unfortunately, on the UCAS platform, but really it's just to illustrate kind of the key components of the process. The first point is to register. So if you're applying for your school or college, what you'll need is a buzzword. So I'm sure the school or college will have that kind of listed on a notice board, or they'll tell you about it when you go to kind of register and set up your UCAS account. And basically what this does is it links your application to your school or college so that your teacher and advisor can add their reference at a later date. So it's really important that you include this buzzword and you have this buzzword kind of on your application when you are setting up your account. Just so, as I said, so it's a lot easier for your teachers or whoever it is that's writing your reference to see your application, but also to add their reference afterwards. But I'm going to go through some of the really key bits. So the personal details and the additional information probably don't need that much explaining. That's just your information about you. But the first kind of key area that we're going to talk about is choices. So kind of picking your course and kind of picking your university. And I'm going to go over this at a very high level very quickly, as we do have other sessions coming up that may also touch on this type of stuff. So I don't want to go into too much detail. But when kind of choosing a course, there's a few kind of really key things to think about. So where in the country you want to be, how far away from home you want to be, so whether or not you want to be really close to home or really far away, whether or not you want to be somewhere like a city or somewhere more rural or somewhere sort of in between both. You want to consider the cost of living, so what it's like, cost-wise. So obviously you might be able to get your student loan, but how much money is it going to cost you to live in that area? Surrounding areas, so making sure you're safe and happy and accessible, and then the type of university. So we have three kind of main types of universities in the UK. We have a city, a campus, and a collegiate style university. And as I said, we'll have other sessions that are kind of going to drill down into a bit more detail into that as well. So This is kind of just kind of give you something to really think about, and then kind of go away and come back to one of our sessions to find out a bit more about those. The other choice that you'll be making is on your courses. So choosing kind of what you're going to study. And again, we'll have another session or other sessions coming up soon with more details about those. And I do recommend checking out where you found out about this session to find out more about those sessions as well. But kind of from a logistical standpoint, when it comes to choosing your choices, so both your course and your university, you only get 5 choices, or up to 5 choices, I should say. And these can be 5 choices at individual universities, or they can be at the same university with different courses, as we see in both of these options. So option 1, this student's applying for all the same courses at different universities, and option 2, this person's applying for slightly different courses at the same university and then other courses at other universities. This is a really kind of key point to applying to university, is that actually you only get 1 application, so you only get 1 UCAS application, and you only get 1 personal statement, which I'll talk about a little bit more detail in a second. So it's really important when you're choosing your courses that you try to narrow those down as limited as possible. You can decide to apply to 2 different courses, but you're going to be really struggling to explain why you're passionate about that subject or those subjects when applying without kind of alienating the other. So we often advise students that they really narrow that down to 1 course, or maybe a joint honours program or something like that. So where you have two courses that you're applying to the same course at a university. So you'll be doing something like history and English. So that's really just to make sure that you kind of can write it in enough detail in your personal statement to those universities without kind of upsetting other universities as well. And again, the best way to kind of search for these is on UCAS. And again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because we'll cover this at kind of our other sessions as well. But using the UCAS course search is kind of the best way to find out information about these. And there's a few factors to take into consideration when looking at these, if you are thinking about looking at them in the next couple of days. So obviously looking at entry requirements, making sure that you are kind of branching out and not looking, just kind of picking subjects that are safe, thinking about other things, looking into detail about modules and all that type of stuff. Making sure that you'll be motivated, which is a really key point, to make sure that you're actually really passionate and interested in that course. And then finally looking at how the course is taught and assessed. And as I've said a number of times, we'll go into more details about this at later sessions. This is just give you kind of a general overview of this area. So moving on to the next kind of key component. So we kind of move away from choices. Obviously, the next kind of bit is education and employment, and that will just be the information about your GCSE grades and any other qualifications that you've got. And then in the employment session, this is a place to talk about, say, like part-time work that you've done, or if you're returning to education, this will be where you've talked about any other full-time work that you picked up in that time. But the next kind of key touch point for us is the personal statement, which is a really key component of your application. So a personal statement is a short reflective essay about why you're the best candidate for the course. This allows you allows universities to get to know you better as the person behind the grades. So it gives us at universities an opportunity to find out more about you rather than kind of just what's on your UCAS application. So it's really important as a university to kind of work out to make sure that you will, not just fit into that university, but you'll also be able to thrive at that university. So obviously that's kind of a really important component. It gives you an opportunity to use, use examples of skills and knowledge and all that type of stuff that you may have picked up in kind of different areas and kind of different sort of spaces, outside of education, outside of school and all of that. So it gives you a chance to really kind of explore those in detail in a personal statement. And again, as a university, it gives us a chance to know more about you and your skills and kind of what what experience you have outside of just school. There are strict limits on this, so you only have 4,000 characters or 47 lines, sorry, so 4,000 characters and 47 lines, and kind of obviously whichever one you meet first, whichever limit you meet first. So you may write, 4,000 characters but only 45 lines, or you might only write 3,900 characters but in 47 lines. That's kind of your limit, so you can't go above either of these limits basically. If you do, basically what happens is it's all cut off. So you copy and paste your personal statement into UCAS. You don't upload like a Word document or a PDF. And basically the UCAS, that kind of HTML box that you copy and paste it in will just cut off at that limit. So it's important to make sure you're sticking within those limits and making sure that you're kind of being concise, but also giving enough detail, which is kind of sometimes a little bit of a difficult balance to strike. You only get one personal statement, as we've said, for all 5 of your choices. So you need to make sure that you don't mention any specific universities or courses by name. So you don't want to start your statement saying, I've always really wanted to apply to study history at Royal Holloway because you're going to annoy the other 4 universities you're applying to. I should have said it a little bit early on, but you don't have to apply to all 5 choices. You can apply to 1, 2, 3, 4, or all 5. It's completely up to you. There are different prices. So there's one price for if you just apply to 1 university, and another price if you apply to more than one university. I believe it's £20 and £25, but that may have changed this year. So I'd recommend checking that out to make sure that I'm correct. So that's kind of, you don't have to have applied for all 5 of those courses. It's completely up to how many you apply to. And kind of considering with your personal statement, again, we're going to go into more detail about this in a couple of weeks' time with another session that we're running on personal statements. But it's important to kind of get an idea of what an admissions specialist is looking for in your application and sort of overall in your application, but also in your personal statement. So they're looking for somebody that is able to study independently and kind of, be able to, function independently as well at university, both academically, but also in their free time. Somebody that can contribute to university life more broadly, so not just on the subject, but also to the university community. Somebody that's motivated and high achieving, so somebody that's, top of their game, top of their class, or, has the ability to go on and do fantastic things at university. Somebody that's intellectually capable, so somebody that's able to take on these big ideas that you'll be learning at university, but not kind of just go at it with a closed mind, but actually an open mind and consider all of the options. Somebody with the potential to succeed, somebody with significant subject knowledge, and somebody with an interest in studying the subject. So those kind of last 3 or 4 are kind of you can bring together. So we're not really looking for students that are, the finished article. We're not looking for students that are experts already. We're not looking for students that are, know exactly what they're doing. We are looking for students that are kind of a little bit different in that respect, but can take on this information. And ultimately, fundamentally, we're looking for students that are interested in studying the subject they've applied for. And very quickly, a kind of a structure for a personal statement. So this is kind of how we recommend structuring it. Again, we'll go in more detail in a few weeks' time. But usually we recommend that you have 4 kind of key areas. You have an introduction where you kind of introduce yourself and kind of why you're interested in that course. You have a section about your academic sort of capabilities and skills and experiences. Section about your extracurricular opportunities, things that you've done in your free time and the skills that you've shown in that. And then a short conclusion about kind of a little bit about your career aspirations and about kind of wrapping everything together. And as you can see on the right hand side, we usually recommend around 70% of this is academic focused and about 30% extracurricular. So moving on to the reference, which is kind of where your teacher or personal tutor will come in. And basically they will write a reference about you. So this will include things like about your academic achievements, your academic potential, why you're suited for that chosen course, your own personal qualities, your own personal achievements, and then any other factors that might influence your performance. So these can be any extenuating circumstances or anything like that. So often a question we get a lot is, should I talk about any extenuating circumstances in my personal statement? My advice is often to leave it up to your tutor, leave it up to your personal tutor or the person that's writing a reference to include it, unless it's really sort of important to you and kind of your application, the reason why you're studying at university. But obviously your personal tutor is going to be writing all this stuff about you, so it's fundamental that they know who you are and they know why you're applying to university and what you're looking to study. So my advice is to find out who that personal tutor is and ask, sit down with them and speak to them a little bit more in more detail about kind of who you are and all that type of stuff. Moving on to kind of going at the end of the process. So you've kind of done all these bits, you've declared that all of the stuff is correct and right, and you've made that payment that we talked about. Your application is then sent. So a few key dates for you to put into sort of in your mind is, first and foremost, mid-May is when you can register for UCAS and begin your application. Depending on what school or college you go to, your school or college might do a big event for this and kind of get you all registered. They might just tell you, they might wait a little bit longer, but just so you're aware, by around kind of middle of this month, you're able to register for UCAS and start beginning your application. By the summer, or from now really onwards until September, is kind of your time to do your research and attend open days. Lots of universities are running online open days, but many are also planning on doing in-person open days. At Royal Holloway, we have some coming up in June and July, so I'd recommend you take a look at our website to find out more information about those. September is when UCAS application can be submitted, so you can register for UCAS and get your application going from mid-May, but you can't submit it and send it off until September. If any of you are looking to apply to medicine, veterinary or dentistry, or apply to Oxford or Cambridge universities, you need to have this submitted by mid-October, so kind of as an earlier deadline for you. Then any other students that are applying for any other courses or any other institutions, you have until mid-January to apply and submit your application. Well, this is what happens with your application. So it goes from you to UCAS and then down to the universities who then sort of send it out to their admissions teams. Some universities will have central admissions teams, so everyone will kind of look at a mixture of courses. Some universities will have very specific admissions teams with experts within those subjects. So there's no kind of type that universities have, it's kind of all mixed out. But this is the kind of your application goes to the admission specialist and then goes back to you once they've made a decision. Once you've applied to university, your UCAS will turn into what's called UCAS Track. And this is where you'll get your responses from the university. So there's 3 possible responses you can get. The first is a conditional offer. This is an offer based on you attaining certain entry requirements or a certain condition of your your offer. So this might be, achieving 3 A's at A level. This may be, having a successful interview. This may be, seeing your portfolio. It could be a multitude of things, but more often than not, it is your entry requirements, making sure that you meet those requirements. An unconditional offer, which is a bit more rare these days, which is made to you basically mostly to students that have already got their grades and already got their qualifications. But this is an offer to you that basically means that you have a place at this university regardless. If you accept it, that is your place and you're attending that university and a specific course, no other requirements needed. And then finally, you have the unsuccessful, which I don't think I need to go into too much detail about, but basically it means you've unfortunately not been made an offer at that university. They may be able to apply, give you feedback and stuff, but that's up to you kind of at that stage and whether or not you want to do that. Once you've been made all of your offers, you then have to decide your first and your second choice, which are known as your firm choice as your first choice, and insurance, which is your second choice. So your firm choice will often have higher grades than maybe your insurance choice, because that's the university you really want to go to. And then your insurance choice often has kind of lower grades. It's kind of a bit of a safety net for you, and it's kind of a backup for you. Some students decide to go with grades, the same grades, so they can decide on the day where they want to go. But often we recommend that you have slightly lower grades with your insurance than you do on your firm, so that you still have a place at university if the grades don't go your way. So that is all from me. That's kind of a whistle-stop tour of the UCAS process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite our student ambassadors to turn on their microphones and turn on their webcams. I'm going to turn my webcam on as well, so you guys can see me again. And basically, it's over to you guys now. So you've heard from me. You've heard all about what about the UCAS process, about how things, what's going on, all that type of stuff, and how things work. And now it's kind of over to you guys to ask your questions. I said to our student ambassadors, and I'm kind of here as well as kind of a backup and a kind of maybe an official line if you guys don't quite know how to answer or what to say. So I invite you guys to start writing your questions in the chat and kind of let us know what you want to know, from our student ambassadors. This is obviously a really important and really good opportunity for you guys to ask real current students questions about university and about their journey to university and all that type of stuff. So I'm going to stop talking for a second. I'm going to get you guys to introduce yourselves. If you can just let the guys know your names, what year of study you're in, and what year you're in, and what you're actually studying at the moment. So Sophia, if you want to start. Bear with me 1 second. I think I need to unmute you both. Give me one moment. Which is a great start. Let's have a look. This is really good viewing, I'm sure. We should be ready. There we go. So I think both of you, or one of you at least, is unmuted. There we go. I think you're both unmuted now. So Sophia, if you want to introduce yourself first, and then
Yeah, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Yeah, great. So my name's Sophia. I am a second-year student and I study history.
I'm Kristanika. I'm a third year and I study computer science.
Excellent. Thank you very much, guys. So I'm going to start off with a question. So you've obviously just said what you study. How did you guys decide on what to study? So how did you decide kind of to narrow down your choices and what you wanted to study? So if we start with Sophia.
I actually have, and still I'm not entirely sure what exactly I want to do in the future, but I knew I really wanted to go to university, and so I went with a subject that I love and that I'm interested in, and that ultimately gives me a lot of good skills that I could apply to multiple careers in the future. So that's how I chose history. I just really enjoyed it at GCSE and A level, and thought that it would be good to continue at university.
Excellent. And Kristanika?
I wanted to go into like the computer science field, but I didn't want to like specialize in software engineering. So I kind of chose computer science because it's a very broad and very applicable degree to many like different jobs, because I didn't know what I wanted to go into like post university at first. So I thought this would be a good degree that I can apply to like many things.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And And why did you guys choose your specific course? So the course you're doing now, what kind of were the reasons why you chose that course specifically out of all the courses that are out there? So Christinika, if you go first.
I think I really liked the structure of the course because I went to a lot of open days, and the course that I chose at Royal Holloway had like I thought the most interesting for me and the course that I would learn the most from. I also liked how third year I could like all my modules were optional, so that was nice. I could pick and choose which I wanted to do, and yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Sophia.
Yeah, for me it was very similar in terms of I just researched course structures and also just the available modules. So I really liked all the different options at Royal Holloway, and I did a bit of research into the different lecturers at the uni and what they do, and even read some books and things that have been published, and just thought that those were the right courses and right lecturers for me, really.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So there's a question in the chat which I think I'm going to have to answer, which is fine. If I'm self-studying an A-level, can my personal tutor provide a reference for me with that? And do you think this would be worth mentioning in my UCAS application or any university interviews? So when it comes to the reference writing, that's a school or college policy. So it's up to your school or college on who your reference writer is, basically. So my advice is to speak to your school or college or whoever runs your careers or your UCAS applications. When it comes to whether or not to mention it in your UCAS application or in interviews, I think definitely if you're self-studying that, if that's self-directed study that you're doing, that's a really good example of showing how you're independent and study skills and kind of a little bit of like that motivation to kind of do an extra subject off your own back and stuff. So I'd definitely mention that in your application and in interviews as well. So brilliant. I'm going to ask you guys, what tips do you have about choosing a university? So again, this kind of leaks into other sessions that we're doing, but it kind of ties into a little bit of here as well. So what tips do you guys have to the students that are on the call today about kind of choosing their university specifically? So we started with Christinika last time, so we'll start with Sophia.
Yeah. If you can, obviously, follow government guidelines, all of that, go and visit, if not the university itself, whether it's on an open day or not, visit the surrounding areas. So if university is still not having open days and things like that, just go to the general area and kind of explore it, see if that's the kind of environment that you'd be happy to live in potentially for 3 years, or even more. And that's kind of one of the main tips, because that's actually how I knew that Royal Holloway was the right place for me. I did get to go to an open day, fortunately, but I even explored just what my local shops might be and just the local area. If you maybe do a sport or have any other extracurricular activities, explore that in the local area and how you can move that to where your new university life will be. So things like that. And then, of course, there's the academic side, the courses, and also societies and things like that.
Brilliant. And Christinika, any tips on choosing university?
I think open days as well and applicant days, they were really informative, because applicant days, which is when like you go in and visit your course and stuff, those were really helpful because it gave you more insight into the course and to see if that's what you really wanted to do, and also actually gave you a taste of what you were going to experience when you start university. So applicant days too.
Excellent, thank you very much. So students ask, if I haven't taken the subject I'd like to take at university in A-level or before, is it still possible to get accepted for that subject? So I'll very quickly answer the first bit, then I'll kind of there's another question I'll ask you guys off the back of that. So yeah, it's still possible. It's obviously transferable skills, and you have to show kind of your level of interest. So subjects like law that lots of students have never had an opportunity to study before at school or whatever, obviously it's going to be really difficult to talk about your experience having studied law. So it is definitely feasible, definitely possible. It's just about kind of how you write about that. obviously, Christinika, you study computer science. Had you studied computer science before you came to university, or was it completely new to you when you came to university?
Yeah, I studied computer science for A levels, so that kind of helped a lot for the course.
Okay, oh, cool. That's fine, no problem. But I got obviously lots of students kind of maybe, as I said, have not come from sort of that background and stuff like that. How did you guys best prepare for kind of that step up to university? Kind of not necessarily, you may have studied the subjects at school, obviously you said computer science, and I imagine Sophia, you studied history at A level as well. But how did you kind of prepare for that kind of step up into university? So Christinika, if you want to go.
I sorry, what was the question? It glitched out.
Sorry, I talked a lot. How did you prepare for kind of that step up from computer science at like A level or IB to then university? So how did you kind of, because obviously the level of the study kind of changes.
The jump wasn't that different going from A level to computer science, because for my course especially, we got given like labs to help us like beforehand, so the jump for me wasn't that much of a difference.
Excellent, good. That's good. Really good to hear. Good.
Yeah.
Sophia, how about you?
Yeah, I didn't find it too difficult. I didn't think it was too much of a difference. I think the difference is more in the learning style. Obviously, you're going to lectures, and then followed by seminars. That was different, but I wouldn't say it's too difficult. But if you do find it difficult, there's so much support at university. So I genuinely don't think that that is something that you should be really worrying about. But to prepare yourself, as I said before, I research the modules that I could learn about, and I research some of the lecturers. So it might be worth, if you're interested in a certain module and you see that the lecturer has published a new book, perhaps purchase it or borrow it from a library and read it, because that's only going to help you. And you can also do reading ahead. Sometimes they publish reading lists for the course quite early on. So if you are worried, you can read all summer if you like.
Yeah, really good advice from both of you guys. From the other side of that, because obviously you guys said that it wasn't as much of a jump. From the flip side, I found it was a big jump. So I also did history at Royal Holloway quite a long while ago in comparison to you guys. But yeah, I found that jump was a little bit more difficult from having done A levels. I found A levels really not easy, but kind of a lot simpler than like GCSEs. So I enjoyed my A levels quite a lot, and then going to university was a little bit of a shock because I still enjoy studying, but like the level of kind of like the reading kind of at first really overwhelmed me. For a course like history, or kind of, you know, with other subjects like sciences, it's obviously getting used to the facilities and getting used to kind of all the content and all that type of stuff. But kind of from that side, how I kind of managed that was just organization. And it sounds really really silly or kind of really that simple, but it was really that simple. It was just kind of getting organized, knowing what I needed to do and when I needed to be and where I needed to be and when stuff needs to be in. And kind of just getting stuff sort of together and making sure that I knew exactly what was going on. And that's kind of my overarching advice on the back of you guys as well. So I'm going to go to some other questions that we've had. What will make your UCAS application stand out from other applicants? So it's obviously a question we've had in the chat. Have either of you guys got sort of any comments on that? Anything that you think would make a student's UCAS application stand out?
I got involved with, I signed up for a few like summer, like I wouldn't say internships, but like experiences, like little mini placements and like summer schools and stuff, to show that I was really interested in them. But not to do, if you don't have the time to do as much like that, just reading, like mentioning books that you've read or why you're passionate about the subject, and also what what you've learned from your A levels that you can apply to the course as well. I found really helpful when structuring my personal statement, and it can just set aside that you can have those skills and like that interest there, because I think that's what they really want to know, if you're interested and you're passionate about what you want to study.
Yeah, excellent. Sophia, have you got anything kind of extra to add at all?
No, definitely. That's pretty much what I would say as well. Any extra experience, but even if it's not specific in the work section or even in your personal statement, you can mention just anything that's relevant. And I would definitely mention, especially if it's something like history or politics that you're interested in, even law, some reading that you've done and what you've gained from that specific book or text, and how that applies in the wider like field of the subject. And one thing that I think people sometimes forget to talk about in their personal statement is why it's important to study that subject as a whole. So not just why you want to study it, but why does anyone study it? Why is it important? Why is it crucial, for example, to study history?
That's really good point. What does universities really look for when accepting an applicant? Again, we've kind of covered that already. It's kind of what you guys have said. I couldn't have put it any better. We're just looking for students that are interested and passionate and that can demonstrate, why they want to study, why their subject is important, all the type, exactly the stuff you guys just said. Obviously the UCAS process can be quite stressful for some students. It can be, obviously, you're waiting around a lot, and you have like tight deadlines as well as other things. How would you guys advise students on making that process maybe less stressful or kind of less chaotic, I guess, to some extent? If we start with Kristanika.
I suggest going to open days really early on, because the earlier you go, most definitely like people will start going to open days like towards like September and stuff. But if you go in the summer, it'll give a better chance for you to speak to students there, like actually see the university in like obviously with like COVID safe, like, and if you're comfortable doing that, or attend like talks and like talks the universities are holding, or like webinars like this. And I would suggest start having an idea of what you want to write on your personal statement, so that when it comes to it, you can just like start jotting down ideas and kind of the structure you want, because you're not going to get something you're happy with, especially with the personal statement, on the first try. So the key is to just start early and just redraft until you have like something you're happy with. But yeah, like open days and doing these little things may like ease the stress of UCAS.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Sophia?
Yeah, I definitely second that, but I would also say, especially if you're a person who gets stressed out by the deadlines and things like that, just have a timeline, either a physical visual timeline in your room or just somewhere that you can just check, and you can maybe even plan your time when you're going to work on your personal statement, when you want to go on open days, or just do some kind of web-based research about different universities and courses. Just plan it out within those different within that timeline, so you can give yourself enough time, especially as you said about the personal statement, because it is really quite awkward sometimes thinking about the fact that you have to just kind of sell yourself on a piece of paper, or online, in words, and just have to describe yourself and talk about yourself. Some people find that quite difficult, and often if you give yourself enough time, you'll think of loads more great things that you can add. So definitely with that, just start as soon as possible and start thinking about it.
Brilliant. Yeah, completely agree with what both of you said. Yeah, fantastic. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe either of you are international students, are you? Both UK students. Okay, that's fine. We've had a couple of questions about international students, but I'm happy to have a go at them myself, and give the best kind of bits of advice from that. So, what advice would you give an international student who's never been to the UK before? Feel free to jump in if you guys have anything off the back of kind of what I say. Please just shout and go for it. But my advice really is to speak to students. So doing stuff like this is excellent. Speaking to current students about kind of what it's like to study in the UK and study at a specific university, There's also lots of fantastic like YouTubers out there as well that do lots of university diaries that are international students. We have a great one at Royal Holloway, Nadia, who kind of I follow on YouTube. She's great. Does some really good videos about kind of what it's like to be a student in the UK, but also to be a student studying at Royal Holloway specifically. So I'd recommend taking a look at those types of people as well. Obviously, visiting is not always easy, and especially at the moment, it's kind of not always possible. And another question we've had from a student is about virtual open days and how it compares to an in-person experience. So first and foremost, I'd recommend virtual open days, whether you're an international student or a UK based student or whatever it is. Going to a virtual open day to kind of get a sense for the university may save you a bit of time and a bit of energy, not going in person. So you might want to attend a virtual open day and then go in person to see the university if you still kind of like what you see, to kind of get an idea of the facilities. So they are obviously slightly different, obviously, but you're not there in person, you can't get that sense of that atmosphere or anything like that about the university. But you can also ask current students again, have that opportunity to speak to current students about their experience, speak to academics and get an idea for the university. Most universities, I think, or some universities at least, Royal Holloway included, do virtual tours. So we have a virtual experience on our website, which is like a 360-degree virtual experience. So you can see the university in all its glory, from sort of drone footage and all that type of stuff. So again, you can kind of, to some extent, get a sense of the university. That's kind of my advice. Have you guys got anything extra to add that I may have missed?
I was just going to say, when you said about chatting to students, if you type into Google or a search engine just Royal Holloway Uni Buddy, you'll be able to chat to students. I'm one of the students on there, and there's also some blogs about university life, even actually applying to university and life at Royal Holloway. So especially if you think of something that you forgot to ask during the session, you can always message on there and we'll reply within 24 hours. So definitely recommend that.
You beat me to it. You beat me to the plug. I'll put a link to the UniBuddy chat at the end as well. So thank you very much for shouting out, because I probably should have done that a bit earlier. Christinika, did you have anything else to add?
No, I was gonna say the UniBuddy thing too.
That's fine. That's good. See, great minds. Great minds. Are summer schools or programs open or going to be held in Royal Holloway? So Royal Holloway does actually have a summer school program that's unfortunately the application process has ended, so that's already closed. But there may be other like open days and taster days in person on campus, as I said kind of in the session. So I think it's the end of June and sort of near the end, sort of middle to the end of July. There will be open days that you'll be able to attend in person, or visit days or experience days. And the best place to look at that is on our website. So it'll be kind of open days or visit us on the Royal Holloway website, so www.royalholloway.ac.uk, and you'll be able to sign up to those and kind of get a look, sort of book onto those events. Another great place to look at if you're looking kind of more generally at university events is Uni Taster Days. So if you just Google Uni Taster Days or unitasterdays.co.uk, there's kind of like a database of all events that universities in the UK are taking place, and you can put in your postcode and it will tell you online events and in-person events as well. So that's kind of my advice from that perspective. So we've got a couple more questions. So if you guys have got any other questions, we'll carry on with a few more that we've got here, and then we'll probably wrap up. But yeah, you kind of maybe a few more minutes to jot your questions in the chat, and we'll get to those as well. So how did you guys narrow down your choices? So first, how did you narrow down kind of your choices to the final 5, and then kind of down to your final 2? So we'll start with Sophia this time.
I just did a lot of research and I wrote a lot of pro and con lists, as boring as that sounds. I think the way I actually did it was I thought about everything that I wanted. So my ideal, environment, ideal accommodation, ideal course, everything. And then I went through all of the universities that I already liked the look of, and just looked at them and kind of ticked off the list. And if they matched to more of my choices, then they were my top university choices that I applied to. When it came to the final 2, it was just about the fact that I went to the Royal Holloway Open Day and I loved it, and I thought that it would be perfect for me. And so actually I I hadn't been to the open day when I first applied, but I just liked everything that I saw in terms of the course structure and things like that. But then I attended the open day, and by the time I made my firm insurance, Royal Holloway actually had lower grade requirements than my other option, but I decided that I wanted to go to Royal Holloway for decimate. So
Nice, yeah, definitely. It must be a history student thing, because I also wrote maybe like reams books and books worth of pocket pads full of pros and cons lists when I applied. So I don't know, Christina, you might have also done that, so it might not just be a history thing. But how did you kind of narrow down your choices?
I um I basically went to the open days, and I kind of did a little bit of emailing between like the unis, asking about whether or not like my grades were like suitable for the course, or if they had any other courses. Like I found out that Royal Holloway offered an integrated masters, which kind of like
Right, I think we've lost you for the second. Sorry, we lost you for a moment. So you said about
helped,
integrated
because that was
masters.
something I wanted to do later on. Yeah, sorry, hello.
Hello, sorry, yeah, we lost you for a second. So you
Hello.
got to like integrated masters, like that you saw about integrated masters, then we lost you. So if you want to, sorry, pick up from there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I saw that Royal Holloway offered an integrated masters, which was something that I wanted to do like further down the line. So that was another selling point for me. At the end, when choosing the five, after going to like various different open days, I did go to Royal Holloway, and just like Sophia, I just loved it. Like it was like I this was where I saw myself going to university. Another was definitely location. It was close to central London, and also the campus is really nice. The accommodation and like resources were pretty like great. Like I saw the library, and it was really like having the library on campus where you live seemed very like convenient for me, especially for someone who's always late. So all of those factors came into play, and yeah, when farming it, I decided to go for here because it was closer to home and its location wise, and also I went to the open day, and they said they held careers fairs. And I don't know what it's like for the history department, but the computer science department with like careers and opportunities is pretty great. So that was a great like selling point.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. And I do want to pick up on that point about like the visiting, kind of getting the sense of that atmosphere. Because weirdly, that was actually I find it really weird when people say that, because that I thought I was quite like on my own in that when I looked around Royal Holloway again ages and ages ago, around like 2012, like 9 years ago, I first looked around Royal Holloway. Um, that was kind of the big thing for me. I remember getting out of the car and just looking up at founders and being like, yeah, this is where I'm going to come. It's like kind of like gut feeling. And that's kind of why universities run open days. That's why we recommend students come to open days. It's because it's great to, well, if you can, because it's great to kind of get that feeling of the university in person, because that kind of what makes it really unique and stuff. So I'm going to ask one more question. So this kind of be our last one, unless we do get any more in the chat. What kind of general advice would you give to students? So say you could go back in time, like you could time travel and go back and speak to your like year 12 self, 16, 17-year-old self about applying to university. What would the one kind of piece of advice be? So I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it, because I know that's kind of that's a big question. But if either of you have like an initial response, go for it. Otherwise, yeah, have a little bit of a think about kind of what that kind of one piece of advice would be. While thinking about it, I can jump in and give a piece of advice, so you kind of have a little bit more time to think about it. Mine would be not to stress about it too much, which sounds really like silly and a little bit kind of maybe difficult to hear if you are kind of in that situation, you're thinking about university, maybe a little bit overwhelmed. But I remember being really overwhelmed with the process. Again, it was quite a while ago, but at the time it was kind of sitting down, doing year 12, doing A levels and kind of coming into year 13, final year of school and stuff like that, and then having to decide, what do I want to do in the future. So if I could, sit down with myself and kind of have a chat with myself, I would really just say, mellow down a little bit. don't worry about it too much. It's fine. You know, whatever happens, it's okay. There are definitely great options, and kind of really reiterate the point, which I was really lucky was reiterated to me at the time, which is just choose something you're interested in and choose something you're passionate about. And that's the advice I always give to students if I can is choose a course that you're interested in and that you're really passionate about, because you're more likely to do much better at that than a course that you're not interested in. Okay, so have either of you got a piece of advice that you would give yourself? Yeah, Sophia, if you want to go first. I see you nodding.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily all for myself, but things that I've seen that other people have done, for example. And I would say just have a real think about the fact that it is 3 years or potentially more of your life, and think about perhaps the person that you might want to be at that point or in the future, and think about the opportunities of, you know, meeting new people, doing new things in a completely different environment, because I know that a lot of people sometimes play it safe, and they stick with a group of friends, or they stick with certain things, and that's perfectly fine if that's what you want to do and you're happy with that. But I know some people that have really struggled as a result because they felt that they can't grow as a person, and university is such an opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself if you want and enter a new chapter of your life. So I would say just have a real think about that, and who you want to become and what you want to use university like for, and make your decision based on that.
Brilliant. Yeah, Christinika.
I would also say to add to Sophia's point, I would also like to stress, like, it's such a stressful time, but I would try and go into every open day with like fresh eyes, and I wouldn't compare the different unis against each other, because each uni is different. It really is just about, like, if I could go back, I would just try to tell myself to stop trying to say, oh, I should have should I pick here, but the here is better, because each uni has its own selling point, and it's honestly, like, to add to Sophia's point, it's honestly where you feel like you will like enjoy those 3-4 years that you're gonna do the degree for. And I would also say try and enjoy the process. It's hard when you're in it, but there's nothing like sending like that relief when you send off your UCAS application, and then you get like and then you receive those track updates. It before you know it, like that time will have passed and you're at uni. So like just try not to think, well, like obviously think, but like not put so much emphasis and stress onto the process, because it will all work out. Just do research and like find out where is best for you, first and foremost.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, definitely. It's an exciting time, isn't it? It's stressful, obviously, but it's exciting. You know, you're planning kind of for your future and to go off and do something new. So yeah, 100%. Thank you both for that. So we've had one more question, which I'll very quickly answer, and then we'll kind of wrap up. So somebody said about references and stuff like that. So studying kind of 2 A levels, then taking a third one independently, how does that kind of work with UCAS? That's a discussion really to be had with your school or college, in my opinion. So have a word with your head of sixth form or your careers advisor, and they'll be able to appropriately sort of help you with that, because that again will depend on your own school or college's kind of guidance, their own kind of sort of way of dealing with UCAS and how that works. So that's kind of really one to be addressed to the school or college. I'm just we do have one more question actually. Sorry, we thought we were finished, but we've got one more. That's fine. I'm a bit stressed out about making sure my grades come out good. What advice would you give for that? Like, how do I sort of not let that kind of take over from sort of a stressful kind of mindset and stuff? Have you guys, either one of you, got something that you wanted to maybe add to that? Sophia, you look like you're nodding. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can. I think, I mean, my way doesn't always work for everyone, but I like to think about things very logically, and try to not get overwhelmed, because your exams, they're going to happen. You're going to sit that exam. And if you let yourself get too worked up emotionally about the fact that that's going to happen, then that will definitely take away from time where you can sit down, revise, and it will also take away from time where you can relax, because in order to learn and study and focus on getting those good grades, you need to also relax as well. And if you're constantly thinking about it and constantly stressed, then you won't be able to handle it all. So I think make a plan, things like revision plans, and just research and things like that will always help you out with that. And definitely think about ways to do things that will alleviate stress. A lot of places kind of recommend doing revision and team with exercise and things like that. So do a bit of research into that and try to just have a whole approach to your revision process ready for your exams.
Wonderful. Christinika, anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, to add to Sophia's point as well, like I suffer from like exam stress and all of that kind of I don't really do well under pressure, but you kind of have to just tackle what each task one by one. Don't try and overwhelm yourself about something that's next week when you have if something more pressing is like this week, just attempt that first and then look to see the next one. Like obviously plan ahead, revision timetable, but at the same time, just try and face each task as they come. Don't like don't overthink about it too much, because it's gonna like exams and all of that, grades, that they're gonna happen, but to just manage the stress, like make a revision timetable, or just like don't put so much emphasis on one thing. If something else is pressing, just tackle what's in front of you first.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you both. 100%. The kind of there's a follow-up as well about kind of personal statement stuff like that, which I'll happily kind of step in on as well. So obviously universities are looking for grades. We do ask for particular entry requirements. These in some instances may be a little bit flexible, but that's dependent on the universities and the different policies that they have and stuff like that. And the universities do look at your personal statement as well. Fundamentally, the reason that the grades are set at a certain level they are and all that type of stuff is basically from a university standpoint. We want to make sure that the students that come into the university aren't going to be struggling when they get to that kind of level of university. The universities are a step up. Different universities have different ways of approaching their courses and how they teach and all that type of stuff, hence why there's different grade requirements and stuff. So fundamentally, they're kind of there for that reason. As I said, we do look at personal statements. We do look at kind of, see about other students and try and, identify potential, but ultimately it's kind of a balance between the grades and the personal statement. But fundamentally, kind of like what you guys have said, my kind of two big bits really is, preparation, organization, all that type of stuff, and kind of, trying to get into that zone of this is study time, this is relaxation time. And the other thing is ultimately, and I sound like a parent saying it, but only, you can only do your best. Fundamentally, you can't do any more than your best. You kind of have to trust the process to some extent, and as hard as it sounds, because it's difficult. But if you feel like you've done enough organization, you've done enough prep work, you've done enough revision, you put all that you can into that, and you can kind of leave an exam or a piece of work and go, I've done all I can here. That's all you can do. That's all anyone can ask you of. And then ultimately, so you have to trust that process and let everything else kind of fall into place, as difficult as that is. And kind of as easy it is saying it from kind of the other side of that, it's that kind of the key thing there. So that is kind of all the time we've got actually today. So thank you very much, Christinika, Sophia, for coming along today and answering the questions. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much. Feel free to turn your webcams off and your mics off and stuff like that, because I'm just going to kind of wrap up now, and I'm going to turn my webcam off. So again, thank you very much for coming along today, guys. Much appreciated. The webinar has been recorded. A couple of people have asked in the chat, and I'll put more details in a second. But if you did want to kind of know more about Royal Holloway, or you wanted to get some more kind of information from us today, you can get our online resources. So we have resources online on our website at bit.ly/rh_resources. And again, I'll put these links in the chat in a moment. You can ask questions to current students using UniBuddy, as has been mentioned, using the chat function. And you can also, if you are writing a personal statement, you can use our personal statement review service, where members of the team that I'm in, the Schools and Colleges Liaison team, experts at reading and helping with personal statements, can read through your personal statement and give you advice and guidance. Also, if you want to find out more about Royal Holloway, you can sign up to our mailings at bit.ly/Royal Holloway RHUL _ mailing list, and you can order or download one of our prospectuses at bit.ly RH prospectus 20. And again, I'll put all these things in the chat in a second. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming along. Do bear with us while I put all those links and stuff in the chat. As I said, if you do want to get a copy of the webinar, you can email schools@royalholloway.ac.uk, and I'll put that email address in there as well. Last thing from me before I kind of leave you this evening is to ask you very kindly to fill out the evaluation that you have at the end of this webinar. This is a new series that we're piloting, so any feedback you have, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, please do let us know on the evaluation form. So bear with me 1 second while I pop all the links in the chat, and then you're free to go. There we go. So all of the information in the chat. Sorry that the links haven't worked, unfortunately. Just copy and paste those out. But you've got all the links and information about signing up to our mailing list, getting a prospectus, and then kind of having a look at our chat function and other resources that we've got on the Royal Holloway website. And at the bottom there, you've got the email address if you did want a copy of the recording. Otherwise, you're all free to go. Again, thank you very much for coming along today. I hope it's been informative, and I wish you best of luck in the future. Thank you very much, guys. Bye.